Hello, I'm Jennifer Murtazashvili, the Director of the Center for Governance and Markets at the University of Pittsburgh. It is a great pleasure today to introduce to you our colleagues from one of Ukraine's most prominent think tanks, Cedos. Cedos is a think tank that focuses on issues of social development and has been doing incredible research on the issues of war and migration during these very difficult times. So I would like to introduce you to Ivan Verbytskyi, who is the director of Cedos. He's here with us today. Valeriia Lazarenko, who's an analyst and the director of this research project, also with Cedos, and our friend Tymofii Brik, who's also a fellow board member at Cedos and the head of the Sociology department at the Kyiv School of Economics. And I should say that I have been serving on the board of this incredible nonprofit for the past several years, and it's a great honor to introduce my colleagues today. So Ivan, can you tell us a little bit about the research that you've been doing and how you've been doing it under such difficult conditions in Ukraine?
Yeah, it was like all my previous life, the war was something like the worst expectation or worst idea what can happen with me, with like anybody else. But when this full-scale war started last month, I understand that it's not just black and white. It's still life, but in other life, in other conditions. And all thoughts, all actions, all feelings are still like human life, but quite another one. So our aim was to track these feelings, these actions, and these transformations of lives, which are still the same, but quite different. And my colleague Valeriia may explain what we actually did and what we find out.
Great, thank you, Valeriia.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Yeah, actually, it's a pleasure to be here and to present the research, what we find during this with this survey, because we started with a point that when the war started, all of us were involved in some volunteering initiatives, in something to do something, but then we realized that it is also important to produce some knowledge about what people are feeling and experiencing during these first days of war. And so we decided to make this research. Of course, as Ivan said, we wanted to grasp the feelings, the emotions, what people were feeling, doing, how they perceived the situation when their life changed completely. And under that circumstances that we were also involved researchers in this project, we were experiencing the same as our informants, we decided to deploy a qualitative approach to this research and to do whatever it is possible. And so what we have today are only the first results of what we have done. And also our research had a range of limitations because of the circumstances we were in. So we were not able to do like a full-scale research and make a normal like scale. And we deployed the Google form, made the survey ourselves, pre-tested this survey on ourselves and on our friends, trying to be as friendly as possible to our informants. And yeah, it was a self-disclosure survey with a sort of, that allowed a sort of narrative approach to our informants for them to be able to discuss, to express themselves in this survey too. And that's why we have like...
Can you tell us about your main findings?
Yeah, sure. Our survey consisted of 6 main question blocks with about the start of the war, first steps when the war started, volunteering, and everyday routines, how they changed. Firstly, as far as our research sample has shown, at the first, most of our respondents were at home when the war started. They were in a safe place, in a relatively safe place that just in a moment turned to immediately unsafe, completely unsafe. And the first thought of the respondents concerned their safety of their relatives. The first thought was and the possibility of evacuation, of doing something. So half of people were thinking, no, it just cannot be, while others were thinking, what can I do in this situation if it has already started? And so in the first hours or first days, people were trying, our respondents mentioned that they were trying to solve the most urgent issues and to pack the alarm suitcase, so-called, and arrange their life into attempts to prepare to a war, like find a nearby shelter and take care of those who were in their responsibilities. We found out that one of the most, like the main decisions that our respondents mentioned were about relocation, whether to leave or to move somewhere, and if move, then where, with whom, by which means, and if to stay, how to take care about the others. Also, a huge contributor to this was the dependents, children and elderly people and animal, like what to do. For those who decided to stay, as I already mentioned, it was about the organization of the routines during the war. Also, another set of important decisions were considering joining the armed force or volunteering organizations. Also, we found out that, of course, main emotion during the first day of the war was anxiety and fear, but also combined with anger towards the enemy. And also, these emotions quite significantly impacted the relationships of our respondents with their relatives and close people, because those they reported us as that many of them had a huge improvement in communication with relatives, while others experienced a decrease in communication with relatives. Because for someone, it was more like taking care of others, but for someone, it was like complete misunderstanding in this situation, especially for those who had relatives or some people they know in Russia, and this relationship changed dramatically. Also, we tried to explore whether life principles of our respondents have changed during the war, during the first days of war, and lots of them mentioned that they changed their firstly attitudes towards Russia as an occupying state, ranging from hatred to like very rude ideas, to dehumanization of enemies. And respondents also pointed out that their attitude towards war have changed, and that some who had previously like pacifist life viewings changed it dramatically and perceived that war is something that can be done. And so they decided perhaps to join the armed force or so. And also a switch in political outlooks, and those who were critical towards Ukrainian authorities before the war and criticized that government united and decided that appreciated the actions of the government in the first days in such a situation. And surely, in most cases, the survey participants did not plan their future to the high level due to the high level of unpredictability and the circumstances. But at the same time, some of respondents mentioned that they already have their plans settled for the days after war, like establishing a family, meeting their loved ones, having kids, and or moving back to Ukraine if they are abroad, or not leaving Ukraine anytime soon. And also, one of the key findings for us was about volunteering, because we suppose that volunteering, like we know in the media, it is incredible that so many Ukrainians are going into volunteering and helping each other. And we were supposing while writing this question into our survey that it would be a sort of coping strategy for people to do some voluntary work. But it turned out to be that it is not only a coping strategy, but also a sort of a moral imperative that how can I sit and do nothing when the war happens in my country? It's the least thing I can do is to volunteer and to help those who are in need. And a lot of people were volunteering not in a spheres related to their job or so, but just sending donations and doing whenever they could in the circumstances they had. So it was a motivation to be useful and to do at least something. And it was incredible for us that really people think of like, what can I do? How can my personal contribution make the victory in this war more proximate? And like this doing stuff is really what have driven people into the first day of war and helped them to cope with the situation overall.
And as we watch events in Ukraine from the outside, I should say one of the things that strikes all of us watching what all of you are doing in this effort collectively is the volunteer efforts are the way that people have come together during this incredibly difficult time. And I was wondering, Tymofii, Brik, if you could just say something and help us contextualize the meaning of all of these research results that really show splits within families over the war. We've learned about that and how it's divided people, but about people remain really optimistic for the future. They want to return, they want to have children upon the end of war. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about what all of this means.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And of course, I'm very grateful to Ivan and Valeriia for presenting, not only for presenting, but actually for doing this research. I think it was a very important strategic choice to start collecting this data and to choosing these specific questions. Right now, obviously, we have some data scarcity. There are some surveys, but they're very superficial. And what you guys are doing provides quite a lot of context to understand what is happening now. So thanks. The survey shows two interesting patterns in my view. On the one hand, it confirms something that we suspected. On the other hand, it also shows something very new, something that a lot of us did not realize. So first of all, drawing from previous surveys and scholarships on Ukrainian civil society and national identity, we kind of expected that Ukrainians are going to be quickly mobilized, that Ukrainians have had this experience of working as volunteers or NGO members, at least from 2014, 2015. So Ukrainians had quite a lot of tools and devices and networks to use, to coordinate, to be engaged in some joint logistical efforts and to support each other. So we kind of expected that, but we still did not realize that this can be so huge. Also, we kind of knew that Ukrainians are quite united in the sense that they have this strong sense of attachment with civic identity. So yes, Ukrainians, they're quite different people. They live in different regions. They may speak different language and adhere to different narratives, but they all adhere to the idea of independent Ukrainian sovereign state, meaning that they can actually sacrifice or have this moral imperative to do something when the state is under attack. So to see this played out in the data is very interesting, because now we can actually transform our hypothetical expectation in some tangible results. And we see from this data some confirmation of what we knew. But there is also something very interesting. I think we will have another meeting. Maybe we will break down these numbers and compare different social groups. But it is also interesting to observe some sort of variation. Yeah, so some people were better prepared and they had their suitcases. Some people did not. Some people were more embedded with social networks and cared about their parents, and others, left immediately. So I think this is a very interesting question here, something kind of a new research question that we should address to understand this variation. There is a great sociologist, Mario Small. I think he's from Harvard now, and he has studied what he calls networks of support. And he had this interesting thesis in many of his papers and books that it's not so much about networks that you have. We all have networks, but it is about our ability to activate these networks. He has a book called Talking to Someone. Like you must have access to someone to talk, to ask for help or to be engaged with them. And here we see something opposite, that a lot of Ukrainians immediately started to look whom I can help to. Yeah, so whom do I have in my network who needs my support? Can I help to my parents? Can I help to my community members? Can I help to territorial defense? So this is a kind of an opposite to what Mario Small said. And I think this is a very exciting observation. And I believe that we should encourage research of this question. It can contribute not only to understanding of Ukraine as a society, but also to the sociological scholarship.
Great, thank you very much. And once again, Ivan and Valeriia, huge congratulations to you on this research. And this is such an important contribution at such a difficult time. So many of us are trying to understand what's happening. And I don't know how you've been able to do it under such difficult circumstances, but this is an enormous contribution. And I think you've helped the world understand what's happening in Ukraine. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.